This is Gene Frenette, sports columnist from the Florida Times-Union, following tonight's Jaguars inter-squad scrimmage. I'm here with Jaguars beat writer Phil Heilman, and the Jaguars tonight looked good in some spots, others looked a little shaky. And Phil, Blake Bortles got off to a very shaky start tonight. Had a nice finish with the great touchdown throw, but to Marquise Lee. Dede Westbrook, who just had barely a half a step on AJ Bouye, but a great over-the-shoulder catch, great throw by Bortles. That was his highlight of the night. But we had other stars tonight, and I know you want to get me on the one defensive star after what I wrote for tomorrow's paper.
There was one defensive star tonight, and I thought it was cornerback DJ Hayden, who you wrote for tomorrow's paper that you hadn't seen much from throughout training camp, and I'll agree. We hadn't seen much from DJ Hayden so far. He had two brilliant pass breakups. Would have had a sack of Bortles if quarterbacks were allowed to be touched. What did you see from him?
Well, to me, the best thing was the deep ball to DJ Chark, and it was a pretty well thrown ball, and he just came in and he really closed on that one. And if you're a secondary coach, that's what you're looking for from your players. You want guys who can react, because a lot of times, as well as I do, there can be a guy can have good coverage on a receiver, but he doesn't look up quick enough, and the ball gets completed. In this instance, Hayden looked up in time and was able to get the pass breakup. I thought that was the best defensive play of the night. Certainly there were a couple nice hits. Certainly Telvin Smith had a nice hit. Leon Jacobs had a nice hit.
Yeah.
But defensive play of the night easily belonged to DJ Hayden.
Yeah, it really might have been the defensive play of camp, because you're right. I mean, he just read it perfectly. Very tight coverage. Similar coverage to what AJ Bouye had on the last pass play, but he couldn't quite turn around. Sort of reminiscent of those touchdowns that Antonio Brown had against them in the playoffs last year. But yeah, I thought DJ Hayden looked good. Another DJ Chark, had another good night. At one point late in the practice, he had 4 catches on 5 passes, including a sliding grab near the sidelines. Continues to stack together a lot of good practices during training camp, but he's a rookie. What are realistic, expectations for a guy who's going to be in his first year? He's going to be part of a crowded receivers room. I mean, what do you think is realistic for DJ Chark this year?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on him continuing to have a good night. To me, he had a spectacular night.
Yeah.
I mean, this was beyond good for DJ Chark.
Yeah.
In fact, I made a remark in the press box tonight that if DJ Chark continues on the level of play that he has been this week and tonight, we could see him challenging for a starting job by week 1. I mean, obviously, let's not forget Marquise Lee also had a nice night tonight.
He did, yeah.
Nice catch over the middle, and there was one particular throw that Bortles made that I contend most NFL quarterbacks would not have made this throw because Jalen Ramsey was, he had him in great coverage on Marquise Lee, and somehow the ball went right through, and Lee pulled it down, got his feet down on the sideline. That along with the over-the-shoulder catch at the end were the 2 best catches of the night.
Yeah, 2 good throws from Bortles there. One that wasn't so good, an interception by Barry Church, probably late, middle-ish to late in practice. Bortles was late, throwing over the middle of the field in a double coverage with Bouye also right there. That's sort of the throw that you don't want to see from Bortles, kind of the throws that he was making in years past, a little too often.
Well, the problem on that particular one, to me, the biggest problem was you were still early on in the 2-minute offense. It wasn't like there was
second play, 18. Of that drive.
It's not like there was 25 seconds to go and the clock was ticking. There was still a minute and change left. So you don't want to see him hesitating, and then throwing the deep ball, because usually if a deep ball is going to get completed, more often than not, that ball's out probably within about 3 or 4 seconds. There was a lot of hesitation there, and it really looked like Blake wasn't really confident when he released the ball that he could complete it. It's almost like, oh, what the heck, I'll just throw it deep. Well, you can't have that.
Right, yeah. Good night, I thought, from Cody Kessler, his backup. Completed about 2/3 of his passes. Tanner Lee, not so much, a guy who the Jaguars like his big arm, and you can see why they drafted him in the 6th round, but so far, I just don't know if he's shown enough to even be a practice squad candidate.
Well, the interesting thing you've been mentioning about Kessler is, I think you said his stats were like 22 of 31. Blake was like 14 of 23 with a pick. If you had flipped these stats back to last year, a year ago, and that had been Chad Henne putting up the numbers that Kessler did and Bortles looking the way he did, there might have been a little bit of a question mark in the air about whether Blake was going to be the starter week 1. Well, now obviously that's not an issue whatsoever. But I will say this for Kessler, as the backup quarterback, the most important thing for him is he's got to try to avoid turnovers. You don't need to make the spectacular play. You've got a really good defense. You've got a running game that presumably is going to be pretty stout this year. So if you get into a situation where you are in because of, God forbid, an injury to Blake, you have to try to perform the way he did tonight, mistake-free, making plays here and there.
Okay, so the Jaguars are through 8 training camp practices now, have the day off on Saturday. We'll be back at it on Sunday. What is Doug Marrone happy about, and what is Doug Marrone not so happy about through 8 practices?
Well, to me, the happiest thing he should be about the fact that so far it's been a relatively healthy camp. There, I know Calais Campbell had a little bit of ankle issue and he sat out tonight, but there hasn't been anything. There hasn't been anything too major so far. So to me, that's the number one thing. I don't care about performances or anything like that. The number one issue is always health. Right. So I think that's going to be number one. Number two, I think there's been a pretty good balance between the offense flashing in camp and the defense flashing in camp. So that's what you kind of want, especially when you've got a defense that should be as star-filled and as stout as this one is.
Is there anything that gives you pause about this team that makes you think, okay, it's good that there's a couple more weeks of camp and preseason to sort of get this ironed out?
Well, until they get into week 1 and get into the real games, I still want to see if they can truly establish a consistent running game. That, to me, should be the number one priority for the Jaguars this year. I mean, Leonard Fournette cannot have a 3.9 yards per carry average this year, and I don't think you will. I think you will see Leonard Fournette get closer to about 4.5, 4.6, which frankly was the averages you saw when Fred Taylor and Maurice Jones-Drew were in their prime. So if Fournette is supposed to be this stud back that everybody thinks he is, that per carry average is got to get up, and to me, that's number one. I think the whole receiver room thing, I think that will sort itself out, and I don't know necessarily that there will be a true when we look at the stats at the end of the year, I don't know necessarily that there will be a true separation between what the number 1 yardage guy is and what the number 3 yardage guy is.
I agree.
And I'm not sure that really matters. What does matter is that guys make plays when they have the opportunity.
You mentioned Leonard Fournette. Another running back who I think deserves mentioning before we go is Corey Grant. Had a 60-plus yard touchdown run. Also caught a touchdown. A guy who he's going to get more opportunities. He didn't even have, I think, 100 total offensive touches last year. The Jaguars want to get him involved. They probably need to get him involved to, sort of challenge opposing defenses in different ways. What is a realistic number of touches per game for Corey Grant? How should the Jaguars best use him?
Well, as far as number of touches, I don't know that you can put a number on it, but I would like to see 7 or 8 at least. Anyway, because listen, one of the biggest regrets that isn't talked about the AFC Championship game, everybody talks about the 10-point lead that was squandered and Miles Jack wasn't down and all that, but the other biggest regret was he didn't get any touches in the second half after he made 3 impact plays in the first half. So I do believe that will be a priority for the Jaguars, but I don't know necessarily that the touches will necessarily come as much on straight ahead runs as they might be on just little swing passes here and there. Get him in space, give him a chance to maneuver, because boy, when he gets in the open field, he is a hard guy to bring down.
Yeah, and that's the way that you want to use him. He's not a guy who's going to run it up the middle in between the tackles 5, 6, 7 times a game, because he's just not that kind of player. He's a guy who's really shifty, really agile in space, and he's kind of different than anything else they really have. Fournette's going to be the pounding back. Grant's going to be the guy they do a bunch of different sort of scat back things with, and I think Yeldon's going to be the third down back. If Fournette were to go down, it'll be interesting to see what they have and how they piece together, their starting running back spot, because I don't think Yeldon, I don't think Grant are really the type of backs who can carry it 15, 18, 20 times a game for 2 or 3 games. But that's a scenario that we don't have to talk about tonight. That's a long way down the road. But yeah, Corey Grant, good night. DJ Chark and DJ Hayden, good night. And good night for the Jaguars to not have any injuries.
Well, listen, the Jaguars are only 1 week into this thing. You got the New Orleans Saints coming up. They've got an off day tomorrow, back at the practice field on Sunday. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this team is built to be able to do some really good things here the next 2 years, and maybe even beyond that. So the only thing that you hope for more than anything in August is, last thing you want is to have just a devastating injury in August, because that just is kind of deflating. So if the Jaguars can avoid that and stay as healthy as they were last year on defense, it's hard to envision this team not being really good this year.
That's it for us from TIAA Bank Field on Friday night. Look for our coverage in the Florida Times-Union tomorrow, Saturday, and also online at jacksonville.com all the time. Gene, what did you write for Saturday?
Well, obviously the what I did write as far as Jaguars oriented. I mean, my lead note is going to be about the whole thing with Ohio State. Now it's turned into a whole he said she said thing. But Jaguars oriented. Look for some numbers that I compared Yannick Ngakoue's sack numbers after 2 years with some guys that are in the Hall of Fame now. And with great apologies to DJ Hayden, I did write for tomorrow. After, of course, the papers put to bed that DJ was the one guy in camp that I hadn't noticed much.
Those early deadlines.
And so great.
Gatehouse, get him some better deadlines.
My guess is that DJ saw that on the website, or somebody told him about it, and he said, "I'll show him." And tonight, sure enough, he did.
That's certainly what it was. Before they turn out the lights on us, we've got to go. Look for our coverage in Jacksonville.com and the Florida Times Union. Thanks for watching.